is the ability that we have to personalize our approaches to health. The needs that you have, the needs that I have, can be very different, and yet we can still accomplish what we need to do with the essential oils. Now, Dave Sterling, myself, all of us here in doTERRA, especially those who have been in doTERRA for a while, we've all been asked this question in one way or another: how do I use the oils for? Or what is the value of the oils in this circumstance? Your greatest opportunity that exists with the essential oils will be what you do for yourselves individually.
Right.
Just because you might hear that Dr. Stoyer or myself, or maybe it's Justin Harrison or any number of other individuals are using an oil in a particular way, doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. And so learn the principles that we'll teach today in categorizing the essential oils and in being able to understand the value that comes from each one of them, and then learn how to apply them for yourselves. When I first got started in the essential oils, it was an interesting journey for me. Although I had some experience with the oils, it was very limited. And my only actual experience with essential oils was a very bad one. I had a patient who had come into my office. I had a challenge that I was dealing with that I was not able to solve through anything that I or my colleagues were offering. And so it had become a very disturbing thing for me. It was interrupting my daily life. And an individual came to my office who was a patient. I'd spent some time with her. She knew that I had a challenge because I was reacting and responding to the challenge I was having while I was trying to work with her as a patient. And she said, "I can help you." And she opened up her purse, and a beam of light shot up to the heavens, and she pulled out a bottle of essential oil. And I heard angels singing. Oh, it was amazing. It was fantastic. And she handed it to me and said, "This will make your wildest dreams come true." And that's all she said. And so when she left, I used that oil. I figured out, well, I must just apply it. Worst experience I've ever had with essential oils. It burned, it was irritating, and I threw the oils in the trash can and said, I will never use those, whatever they are. That was my introduction to essential oils. But as fate would have it, just like each one of you, let me ask you a question by raise of hands. How many of you are using the essential oils because you had a personal need? Yeah, all of us. Keep your hands up. How many of you are using the essential oils because you know somebody whom you're helping that also has a need? We're all doing those exact same things. And I want you to know and understand that as owners of this company, we are no different than you are. We have need for the essential oils in our own lives. We use them personally. Dave shared some very intimate situations within his own family today about how he was using the essential oils and the value of that came to them because of the essential oils. Now, doTERRA is different, and you heard a lot about that this morning in listening to Dave Sterling. It's interesting, we always compartmentalize things for what we think and what we feel individually. I like the message that Dave shared this morning, that doTERRA helps people to heal. You remember what he said? He said it helps them to heal emotionally, it helps them to heal financially, it helps them to heal physically. He said sometimes it even helps people to heal spiritually. That's all well and true. And when I think of doTERRA, putting it into my own perspective, doTERRA is different because of you. doTERRA is different because of the things that you are doing on a daily basis, not just to satisfy your own needs, whatever they may be, but in the things that you're doing to help other people. We've all had the experience where we've met somebody and we've thought to ourselves, I know that the oils could be of benefit to them. We are making a difference, and we've introduced essential oils in a way that they've never been introduced before. And so I want you to recognize and realize that while you're a part of something brand new right here in Brazil, you're a part of something that has become well established, that is well known, That is an expectation that people now have for quality and for the outcomes and the way that they can share those benefits with others. That's what makes doTERRA different at its core. Now, in those differences, that posed some challenges for us very early on, which are some of the areas that I get the privilege of focusing on and working with within the company. I love Dave's words when he said that he appreciated all of his partners. I have that same appreciation. What a privilege it is to work with such great individuals who have unique skill sets. Remember, I liked when Dave showed that picture of the Orem Library, which is where we started the company. One day in that library, the discussion came up about whom would be the CEO of the company. Now, you might think that there would have been a lot of discussion about that. Well, I should be the CEO, or I should be the CEO. The only discussion that we really had, I remember looking at Dave Sterling and saying, unless you're going to be the CEO, I don't want to participate. I don't want to do this. We each come with our own strengths and our own qualities, and the value that that brings when we combine them together. It's a privilege to work not in just doTERRA. It's a privilege to be a part of a company that has forward-facing morals, values, and objectives. And I hope you get a sense that as you continue in doTERRA, as you yourselves become an integral part of what doTERRA is, what it will do, and what it will become right here in Brazil, I hope you recognize that you also have a great opportunity to emulate those same characteristics. We will do that through who we are and through what we do. And the essential oils offer for us the perfect vehicle for that to take place. Now, I have no idea what that says. I'm going to give you I think I can figure it out. I'm going to give you some insight. Dave Sterling, when he was giving his presentation this morning, he ran into a couple of slides where he was stammering a little bit. And it's because neither one of us, I think we are the only Americans here today who do not speak Portuguese, me and Dave. I think that's about it. Now, we went through great detail yesterday in working all of this out, and my only request was if I could have everything be in Portuguese here, but everything down there be in English, that would be fantastic. But what I have is everything in Portuguese and everything in Portuguese. So it's a really interesting time for me on stage right now. I want to thank you all for that. That's just perfect. That's fantastic. So what this is talking about, I believe, because I created that slide, one of the things that we had to do when we first started doTERRA was we had to create this opportunity to not only define what essential oils were, but to define the process by which we would govern ourselves. Dave talked about how we, 4 or 5 years ago, launched this great program called Co-Impact Sourcing. But what Dave left out of that discussion was that was literally a part of the very first discussion we had when he and I and Emily came together, was to talk about the quality of essential oils. We had no interest in doing what other people had done or were currently doing with the essential oils. It means that we had to redefine them, perhaps possibly for the very first time. It meant that we had to reposition them, and we had to move them into an area and into a space. It's okay, it's fine. We had to move them into I think it's fine anyway. If I'm speaking about something that's different than what's on the slide, excuse me, pardon me. Yeah, I'll grab it, thank you. What are you saying? Lemon? How about some peppermint? I accept. Now I can tell, forgive me, I really am okay, but I'm just, thank you. I'll give this right back to you. Maybe. I am okay. It just turns out that I'm allergic to all of you, and I have to now leave. Oh, thank you. You guys are starting to get what it means to be a doTERRA wellness advocate. You're starting to understand. Normally what happens, normally what happens though, let me tell you the expectation. Normally what happens, and I'll share my own experience with this, when I'm with my wife, I love being with my wife, she's wonderful. But my wife has a habit of believing, excuse me, which I'm grateful for, that I can solve anybody's health issues. And so we'll be at the grocery store, or we'll be shopping, or we'll be on an airplane, and somebody will be having a challenge. And my wife is always very fast to ask them what their circumstance is. What's bothering you? Do you have a headache? What is it? And then once she's discovered that, she just looks at them and says, oh, my husband can help you. No worries. One time I was on an airplane and there was this announcement, which I never like to hear. I don't know how many physicians we have here with us. Dave Sawyer can probably relate to this, and others of you who are doctors. You never like to hear on an airplane, is there any medical personnel on board? You just don't like to hear that, because that means there's probably some type of an issue you're going to need to deal with, and you may not have everything that you need. Well, I was on a plane, flying with my wife, and there came that announcement, is there any medical personnel on board? And I sat quietly, and my wife said, aren't you going to respond? And I said, sweetheart, I've been traveling for a long period of time, and there's lots of people. You'll see that there's going to be lots of people who get up and who are going to go and give the attention that needs to happen. And she goes, are you sure? And I said, I'm positive, sweetheart. You go back there, or you go up to the front, wherever it happens to be, and you're just in the way, because there's so many people who are eager to help, and so I don't need to go. She's like, okay, if you're sure. A minute or so later, the announcement came on again. And she goes, see, I told you, nobody is responding. And she puts the flight attendant call button. And the flight attendant came immediately. She said, my husband's a doctor, he'll help. And so off I went. They took me to the back of the airplane, and there was a woman who was there who was having a panic attack and was not able to breathe. And this is a scary circumstance, especially when you're 30,000 feet up in the air over the middle of the ocean. It's a scary circumstance because your options become very limited. They didn't really have a lot on the plane that would help me. And so in my mind, I'm starting to think about a tracheotomy, which is not a fun procedure to do. And I'm explaining to this woman, I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. She got out, I'm a doctor. And I said, okay, then you know what's about to happen. If I can't get you to breathe, I'm going to have to do a tracheotomy. What was really funny about that, and this is where you need to continue to grow in doTERRA. As I'm working with her and I'm trying to help her with all the means that I have on the airplane, a hand comes across the aisle where I was. It was a bottle of Breathe from a wellness advocate. And she said, Dr. Hill, wouldn't you like to use oils? And I said, yes, I would. I gave her that bottle of Breathe, and she began taking some deep breaths. I put her up in the front of the airplane to sit with my wife, who could watch over her, and then I took her seat. I found myself in the middle of a bunch of wellness advocates. I did not know they were on the flight. And we talked about oils for a long period of time. So I appreciate you bringing me your bottle of peppermint. You see that my cough has subsided. And I'll hang on to it for a little bit if that's okay, unless it comes back. When we share essential oils, we are making a difference for people. However, what we share becomes equally important. And this was the concept that we began having discussions about right in the very beginning in doTERRA. What do we do to create and to make change with the essential oils? How do we guarantee that the quality that you and I need, that we expect with essential oils, is going to be present all the time and consistently? That was our biggest challenge. That was our biggest dilemma in doTERRA. Secondarily, we faced other obstacles, which Dave addressed and spoke about. How do we finance the company? How do we start the company? All of those other things were secondary to this one question. How do we do what's never been done before? And that's what we were trying to accomplish in doTERRA. Now, we began by defining what essential oils are. And there is a lot of debate about this, believe it or not. Not everybody agrees on what an essential oil is. Dave mentioned to you some standards that have existed in the past, and there is several. But there was no standard that existed for essential oils in the context that we were developing them. The context to which we were moving the essential oils. To bring them into mainstream. To have them be accepted for what they are. Which is this unique form of health, this unique form of wellness that can't be duplicated in any other way, regardless of how sophisticated we become, especially in our approaches to medicine and to health. And so we began by defining that essential oils are only volatile aromatic compounds. It's only that chemistry that we find within the plant. Now, you've probably seen this and 1,000 other pictures like this, but I like this picture because it identifies what it is that we're trying to do, what we're trying to liberate. These are actually called trichomes. They're specialized glands. Every plant houses essential oils differently, but this is a fairly consistent presentation of where we find the essential oils. And when we steam distill, or when we go through some other process of liberation and we lyse those individual sacs, that essential oil is liberated from the plant. It's all of that chemistry that's within that essential oil that you and I are most concerned with. And yet there is not clarity in the essential oil community at large. I'm giving a little bit of a call to action, which says, as we move forward in doTERRA, here in Brazil, know and understand that the essential oils that you will have, that you currently have and that you'll have going forward, will all meet a quality standard that is unique, different, and specialized to doTERRA. It is that way because we had to define what essential oils were in their very nature. Here's a good example of how that definition has been skewed and how it has been changed. I'm surprised. This actually came from a PhD. In the same article, he reflected and he said, essential oils come from plants and they contain many different types of compounds, including terpenes, which is true. He said including vitamins and minerals, which is not true. And then he went on to say that the quality of an essential oil actually has nothing to do with the chemistry. It's only an issue of aroma and price. The more expensive an essential oil, the better it is. I hope that your expectation for essential oils supersedes his. In doTERRA, it is all about the chemistry, in all of its facets. It's so interesting to me when we look at essential oils like rose, for example. Rose oil is a beautiful oil. You don't have that currently, but you will have at some point, and you'll have access to it from time to time. Rose is very expensive because of how we have to liberate that oil, how we receive that oil. Individually, every single rose petal has to be picked on its own because those oil sacs that I just showed you are so delicate that if we do that any other way, we break those oil sacs and we don't get any essential oil. It's all gone. Remember, these are volatile aromatic compounds, which means that they're liberated easily, quickly. Volatile meaning that in the body they can be metabolized quickly and efficiently. Volatile meaning that in the environment, in the air that we breathe, they can evaporate and be liberated quickly. When we look at all of the complexity of the chemistry, whether it's rose oil or it's peppermint or it's lavender, even when sometimes we believe an oil is extremely non-complex. For example, when we have chemical dominance within an essential oil, maybe we look at the oil of wintergreen, which is about 99% methyl salicylate as an ether. as an ester, I'm sorry. Maybe when we look at that, we think, wow, that's a really simplistic model. But yet, wintergreen, even though 99% of it is just one compound, that remaining 1 to 2% of that essential oil is made up of hundreds of compounds, wait for it, thousands of compounds. One of the things that I have great privilege for is working with many experts throughout the world. I'm grateful for their knowledge, I'm grateful for their experience, their expertise. I'm thankful that I get to collaborate with them as often as I do and in the capacity that I do. One such expert is a gentleman by the name of Brian Lawrence. In the chemistry of essential oils, I would say he is the world's leading expert. In the identification of oils and their chemistry, what it should look like, I would believe him to be the world's expert. I was talking with him about this issue of chemical dominance versus chemical diversity. In some oils, we see very complex and diverse chemical profiles. And in others, we see very simple profiles, like wintergreen. And he started laughing at me. Now, I don't know if you've ever been laughed at by anybody, but where they get that look in their eye and they say, "You're the dumbest person I know," kind of a laugh. That's how I felt. And he explained to me, "Dave, that's only the chemistry that we choose to look at. That's only the chemistry that we have gone so far into. If we look at the entire profile, which means that we have to extend our testing model of GC and mass spec and all those things for hours, which we already do it 4 and 5 times longer than anyone in the industry. But if you extended that for hours, you would find that every single oil has thousands of compounds affiliated with it. And so back to rose. Rose is this beautiful oil, has an amazing aroma. Some of the most powerful experiences I've ever seen with the essential oils have happened with rose. The one compound that is responsible for the aroma of rose exists at less than 0.002% in solution. Very small, very minuscule. And yet you remove that chemistry and you lose one of the primary value points of what rose essential oil is. We contend that this person is incorrect. We suggest that that is not true about essential oils. We need all of the chemistry, in all of its complexity, in all of its uniqueness, because that's what drives the outcomes that you and I expect. Now, we do that in a number of different ways and in a number of different fashions. We've developed this standard now called CPTG. Please have confidence in this standard. We're asked this question quite often: where did that standard come from? What government agency backs that up? There is no government agency. There is not a standard that exists that defines quality. They only exist to define quantity or quantifiers of the oils. In other words, for this to be lavender, it has to have linalool acetate, and it has to have linalool. But if it does, you can call it lavender. I don't care if that's a synthetic linalool. I don't care if that's a synthetic linalool acetate. That doesn't matter. But it matters to us because chemistry in its pure form, chemistry in the context of CPTG, behaves differently in your body. It produces different outcomes than those that don't. Now, I'm going to be really bold for a moment. I will tell you unequivocally that doTERRA essential oils is the leader. We have defined quality different than anyone else in the world, and we hold ourselves to it. We refuse to deviate from it, primarily because we wanted to do and be something different, something that did not currently exist. And so when we look at the chemistry, it's a hard profile for us. It's an immovable sequence when we say only volatile aromatic compounds. When we say the right aromatic compounds, it's not okay to mix one chemistry set from another oil to change the chemistry of this oil. We don't want to isolate chemistry. We cannot isolate chemistry because it changes the value of the oil once again. And then finally, potent concentration, meaning it's not enough just to define that we only want the chemistry that's there. We need that in potent concentrations. These two things together, CPTG and co-impact sourcing, is the only way that we can find to do that with consistency. Now let me give you some examples of what we go through. CPTG is really about analytical chemistry. This is chemistry in its most boring sense. It really is. It's analytical chemistry. It's defining and looking at what does this sample have within it, what is the origin of it, and how much of it is there, and does it belong within that essential oil. Now, while it's boring, we partnership with people and have people